What is up? What is up? What is up? It is Tuesday. You know what that is. It is time for the Etoft21sports Show. My name is Eric. I am the man behind Etoft21sports. You can find my work on Twitter at Etoft21, on Instagram at Etoft21sports_, on TikTok at Etoft21sports. How is everyone doing today? We have a phenomenal show for you lined up. Thanks for those tuning in for the first time. Thanks for those who are coming back. Today on the show, me and my boy Brandon are going to be breaking down the AFC East. Me and I'll be telling you what fantasy football player to avoid this year who is currently being drafted in the top 10. And my boy Gino is going to tell you what horse racing bet to lock in at Saratoga tomorrow. Let's see what Gino has lined up for us.
Eric's talking sports. We're going to help him out. Give you a horse racing play for Saratoga for Wednesday. Flip to race number 10. It's the finale for Wednesday. We're going to go all the way to the outside, the number 11, Aquila Moon. 5-1 on the morning line. My value line is 7-2. 7-2 or over, I'm going to make a win wager. Anything under that, I think that's a line that gets a little bit shorter than what we want. And with Aquila Moon, this horse debuted in a loaded maiden race back in October at Churchill. That race produced 3 next out winners. The winner that day has won is a 5-time winner, a 4-time stakes winner, won the first 4 starts of her career. So that was a horse who was very, very good, and that franked the form of this runner. Second place finisher that day, Promises to Dance, came back to win next time out, then was second in a stakes behind Marissa's Lady. That horse is a multiple winner. The 8th place finisher is a horse named Beautiful Empire, who won next time out, is now 3 for 7 and a stakes winner. Debuted in a strong race, a nice steady tab. This horse has been working steadily since the end of May. You're going to get first-time Lasix, the blinkers coming on, and this barn is actually capable off of a long layoff. Lots of things to like about the number 11, Aquila Moon. Anything around 7-2 will make a win wager on Wednesday.
Guys, Aquila Moon in the nightcap at the spa. Make sure to lock it down because my boy Gino knows what is going on in horse racing. Now we're going to switch our attention and we're going to be talking about a fantasy football player you need to avoid in this week's fantasy football player spotlight. And I know this is going to catch some people by surprise because he's going off in the top 10. And who is that player? Delavan Cook. Delavan Cook is in this week's fantasy football spotlight. Per Fantasy Football Pros, Delavan Cook has an ADP of 8.2, and he's the 6th running back going off the board. I have a couple reasons why I am not going to be drafting Delavan Cook this year. The main reason is the Vikings changed their scheme to a zone running scheme in 2019. That is when we saw Delavan Cook have his insane breakout season and kind of break out to be the productive running back that he was. Now, new coach Kevin O'Connell is coming in and they are switching to a multiple zone scheme. What does that mean? They're going to be running zone, but they'll also be running some power schemes, which is completely different. And that's concerning because Delavan Cook has shown that he's done his best production in a zone running scheme. Next, the offensive line is built to run a zone blocking scheme. What does that mean? That means size-wise, they are insanely smaller compared to teams that run a power blocking team. So when it comes time to run a power gap, a power scheme run, they're really going to struggle creating the lanes for Delavan Cook to be able to do some stuff. Next, he's been in the league for five seasons. Delavan Cook's been in the league for 5 seasons, and he's missed 25 games. That's an average of 5 games per season. And I'll be honest, I cannot draft a running back that misses that much time. I can't use my draft capital on someone that has that much of a draft history. That's another reason why I'm not drafting Delavan Cook. Also, new coach Kevin O'Connell, his offensive system, he uses the short passes to set up the run. With Delavan Cook not being an accomplished pass catcher, that is going to be, you're not running the ball more. You can't catch the ball out of the backfield. I really think he's not going to be a factor in the offense where he's been in years past. So you factor all those reasons together. And that is why I am not drafting Delavan Cook in the fantasy football this year. There's just too many variables where he's just, look, I just can't trust him. And then also there's the handcuffed issue. I mentioned the zone scheme. It used to be in the past, you could just handcuff and you could just take Alexander Madison. Now, Madison isn't a zone runner. And we saw what happened in the past when you don't have a zone runner with, I think, Devontae Freeman with the Falcons a couple years ago. When Devontae Freeman was with the Falcons a couple years ago, and they switched after Kyle Shanahan left from a zone scheme to a blocking scheme, everyone was like, what's up with Devontae Freeman? He would just put his head down and he'd just run right in to the lineman in front of him because he wasn't used to running in a blocking scheme. So it's important, like when you are doing this fantasy football stuff, you need to make sure you understand what the schemes are, the running backs, what kind of schemes they use, what kind of schemes, what kind of runners they are, and then just kind of build it from there. So now what we're going to do, my boy Brandon, he's having some technical difficulties. He will be hopping on the stream as soon as he can. We're going to shift our attention and we're going to talk a little AFC East. And we're going to start out with the New York Jets. The odds via Fanduel are going to be scrolling at the bottom of the screen. They are 150-1 to win the Super Bowl. AFC, they are 85-1. AFC East, they are 24-1. They have an over-under of 5.5. They finished last season at 4-3. Their Pythagorean win total was 4.6. So what is the Pythagorean win total? The Pythagorean win total is basically you take the points scored over points scored and points given up times the amount of games times 17. That comes out to 4.6. So it's basically they finished where they should. Looking at the Jets, this is the main thing that stood out for the Jets for me. They were 13th in rushing yards per attempt, but they were last in rushing attempts per game. They were graded out as the 13th best in run blocking. So these are my questions. You have a young quarterback. The best thing to help the young quarterback is a running game. You are averaging the 13th most rushing yards per attempt, and you ran the ball the least amount in the NFL. Stuff like that doesn't make sense to me. I just don't get it. And then you look at their defense. Robert Salou is supposed to be this defensive guy. They gave up the most amount of points and they gave up the most amount of yards this last year. So it begs the question, do the Jets have the right guy there coaching? Brandon is on the stream. Technical difficulties.
Yeah.
What's up, my man?
My apologies. It's kind of like the Patriots right now. I'm still wishing they'd be at the top of the AFC, but I'm starting to be delayed just like their roster seems right now.
So we're talking about the Jets. I was just talking about how they were 13th in rushing yards per attempt, pretty good, top half of the league, but they ran the ball the least amount of times per game. With a young quarterback, you need to run the ball. Salone's supposed to be this defensive-minded coach. With all that factoring in, do you think they have the right coaches for the job?
I don't think so, and I think I've always wanted to say that juggling coaches year after year is a bother to me, solely because the Jets have done this, the Dolphins have done this, the Pats and Bills, they have not. But when you have a guy come into a team that's been so bad for a couple years and you expect that quick turnaround, those two teams are so quick to bring somebody in and then fire him within a year because it hasn't worked. And I don't think that this coaching staff has had enough time to reevaluate where they need to be, because out of these four, where are you putting the Jets in the division? Just immediately. Dead last.
I mean,
the same as they have been for a while, because they don't settle. They want that quick change. They want the fan base. Let's be honest. MetLife's going to be packed the first couple home games. Jets fans are diehard. But once they lose those couple home games, lose those couple away games, then ownership sits there and looks, we need a new decision. We need a new coach. And then they flip them again. And I don't think they're ready for it yet.
I mean, one of the things that stood out to me was the offense. When Corey Davis was there versus not when he was there, he's the field stretcher. Him being there, the offense looked a lot better. In terms of fantasy, if I am going to target somebody, it's going to be him. 21% target share. So I really think he's going to be the alpha in terms of the wide receiver room. Another thing that stood out to me, when I was watching the games, it looked like Zach Wilson was lost. And Mike White comes in, and he was able to pick up the offense better. Do you feel like Zach Wilson is the guy?
I don't know. I feel with this whole controversy that's coming out, kind of putting him in the spotlight, the whole thing with his best friend and all of that, I feel that that's going to rain more of a star on top of him, or I should say a spotlight on top of him, that you would expect the man to come out, have some swag, be able to complete games, when I still don't think he's the guy. I look at him, and some people will laugh at this, but I look at him as more of a Johnny Manziel. Like, he's got the talent, he's available, but can he put it together? I don't think he can. I think he's going to have way too many off-the-field issues for him to concentrate on what he needs to do on the field.
And another thing, everyone talks to me. Everything I hear is, Eric, they had a good draft. Eric, they had a good draft. So I'm looking at it like this. First-round pick, they drafted Sauce Gardner, the DB from Cincinnati. Sauce Gardner uses his hands immensely when he's defending wide receivers. That's going to lead to PIs because it's an offensive league in the NFL. Then they drafted Garrett Wilson, their next first-round pick. This is the third year in a row that they have used a high pick on a wide receiver. With me, that doesn't sit well. And then lastly, at the end of the first round, they drafted the kid, Jermaine Johnson, out of Florida State. Anyone that watched Last Chance U knows that this kid doesn't have a work ethic, doesn't work hard. I'm just not a fan of what they did. The only pick that I absolutely love is in the fourth round. They drafted my boy, Max Mitchell. Max Mitchell played at Louisiana. Louisiana runs the zone blocking scheme exactly like the Jets are going to run. So you have someone that's familiar with the zone blocking scheme where you have to be the cuts and everything. So I really like that. But this is going to blow your mind. They gave up the fourth most rushing yards and the most yards per carry. They did nothing, absolutely nothing this offseason
to fill those gaps.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's kind of like, I look at their season like this. We're going to go through their schedule in a second. I put them at 6-11, and I feel I'm being very generous with their 6-11. I have questions. They can't stop the run. I have questions about Zach Wilson. I put him at 6-11, and I feel I'm being generous as hell with the 6-11.
I agree with you. And going back to Zach Wilson just for a second, he gets into those scrambles and this random, let me throw it up and hope somebody catches it. And 90% of the time, it's turning into a pick. We watched it multiple times last year of him just trying to get out of the way. Instead of just throwing it away, he tries to make that extra pass that's not available, and the ball's going the other way. Until anything like that's changed, and you teach a quarterback just to tuck it down, run out of bounds, throw it in the dirt, they're not going to have enough possessions to even keep up with a mediocre team like themselves. It's not going to happen.
So let's kind of look at their schedule. Their schedule opens up. They open up against Baltimore. That's just brutal. Baltimore is going to be vastly improved. That's probably going to be an L. Next game, they play Cleveland. Even if Watson's not there, and let's for argument's sake, Watson is not there. Cleveland had one of the best rushing attacks in the league last year and one of the best offensive line. And the Jets did absolutely nothing to stop that. So, you know what? I think they're going to lose that. They play Cincinnati. That's a tough one. They play at Pittsburgh. That's going to be a grind out game. They play Miami at home. They play at Green Bay, at Denver. Then they have New England. Then they have Buffalo. Ceiling. We're talking best case scenario in my eyes. They win 3 games before.
Yeah.
Absolute best case scenario. They win 3 games before the bye. Then after the bye, they are playing the Patriots. That's an L because the Patriots are coming off a bye too. And then they play Chicago and Minnesota. I'm down on both teams. I think that they can win. can win both those two. Then they play Buffalo. They play the Lions. And I'm telling you guys, Lions are going to be vastly improved this year. They get Jacksonville on the short week with Jacksonville going up north. And then they play Seattle and Miami. I mean, this is a brutal schedule. And I would definitely lean, as Bobby's asking, I would lean to the under 5.5. And I'm very generous with that 6.
Yeah, and if they get 2 games are going to be from the division. Just being an AFC East fan in general, no matter how good or bad teams are, a lot of these teams split each other. The Dolphins and Pats have done it for years. No matter how good New England's been, they split with the Dolphins. No matter how bad the Jets have been, they split with the Bills. Like, there's always that AFC East awkward team that just randomly loses. You remember the miracle game last year with Miami splitting with New England, or 2 years ago. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So you always had that split. So I'm giving them 2 wins within the division. But outside of that, I don't see them grabbing 3 more wins on top of that.
Yeah, so I would definitely lean toward the under. I'll tell you one thing for sure. I'm sorry, Britt, but they are going to beat the Bears. They're definitely going to beat the Bears.
Don't do that to Brittany. Don't. No.
They're definitely going to beat the Bears. Bears are going to have such a brutal season.
I can't. Brittany, I'm on your side. Like, I can't do that with you, Eric. Like, they're not beating the Bills, or they're not beating the Bears. They're not.
So now we're going to switch over to Leo's boys. Fins up. We are switching over to the Miami Dolphins. Dolphins 40-1 to win the Super Bowl, 20-1 to win the AFC, 4.5-1 to win the AFC East. Over under 8.5. They finished 9-8 last season. Their Pythagorean win total was 7.6, so they overachieved according to that. Teams that overachieve tend to have some regression next year, so the trend is to play the under. My question to you is this: do you find it weird that after they fired Flores, all his assistants stayed?
Yeah, I find that very weird. The fact that that entire staff stayed after him getting fired, I don't want to get into a whole lot deep into it, but usually your assistants go where you go. So the fact that all of them stayed except you, Flores, is concerning. I don't understand it. I would take the over 8.5. You know, this is hard for me to say being a Pats fan, but I think this team on paper with Tua's finally got the receiving core that he needs if he is a proven quarterback. Tyreek Hill has come out the other day. The reason he went to Miami is because he's going to the most accurate quarterback in the league. I find that false and just him shooting his mouth on his podcast at home. But the receiving core is there. The tight end is – everything's there in place. But my question to you, does Tua finally come through and be a NFL elite quarterback with those kind of weapons?
Anyone that's known me and like this is before you and I started working together, I said it from the get-go. Tua is not the guy. He's got a hitch in his motion. He's left-handed. How his eyes are, how he looks across the offensive line, they're too low. He has a hitch in his motion, can't throw the ball deep. I've never been a Tua guy. And just this is going to blow your mind. They were 8th in passing attempts, but 17th in passing yards. Okay. Also, Tua, just to show you how weak his arm was, can you guess where Jalen Waddle was ranked in wide receivers for average depth of target?
23rd.
133.
Oh, excuse me.
133. Tua can't throw the ball down the field. Now, I get it. You know, you are bringing in Tyreek Hill. We need to remember that McDowell, the guy they're bringing in to coach, has been with Shanahan since 2011, since the Cleveland years. So basically everything they did in San Francisco, he's going to be shifting over to Miami, running all the systems. So we have to expect they're going to put Tyreek Hill in the backfield, basically use him like they did Debo.
So Tua's stats are going to be so off because he's going to hit Tyreek Hill on those quick stops within 5 yards. That Hill is going to turn into 40. He's going to turn into a 70-yard touchdown. So his stats are going to be skewed based off of the completion because we know how Tyreek Hill does with those. He takes those quick slants that should be 7 to 10 yards to get a first down and turns them into a 50-yard touchdown.
I agree with Chase. Tua does have a baby arm.
He does.
Um,
Good comment, Chase. I like it.
my thing is this: they need an offensive line. Their offensive line should be better. They brought in Connor Williams, the guy from Dallas, to be the center. They brought in Armstead, the guy from the Saints, to be their tackle. My worry with Armstead is he has an injury history, really bad last year, was beat up last year. He needs to stay healthy. Also, the one thing the NFL showed us last year is if you went to college with your quarterback tends to look in your direction. Do we see a scenario where Tua is still peppering Waddle with targets and Tyreek Hill gets upset?
Absolutely. If Tyreek Hill doesn't get the touches that he wants, it's going to be a crap show at that point because he is not soft to speak to the media. He is not soft to rattle the locker room. When he's not getting what he wants, even though he's getting that money he wants right now, if he doesn't get the touches, you've seen it on field. You've seen him chew out Patrick Mahomes. Like you've seen it happen live. That locker room can become toxic real quick if he doesn't get the touches that he wants. Plain and simple.
Now, about the defense. Well, let's talk about the defense for a second. Created the 8th most turnovers.
Yeah.
Had the 5th most sacks. They brought in Melvin Ingram, who's still good at getting into the passer, good at underrated run stopper. They drafted Channing Tindall, which I think is going to help and maintain and even improve their defensive line getting to the quarterback. My worry is this. Byron Jones and Xavier Howard are at the age where we see DBs start to decline. So that's my one worry, just because they are such a pivotal part of what the Dolphins want to do defensively. If those DBs can't guard, can't defend, that is huge, and that is definitely a big blow. And we need to look at their schedule. Let's just take a look at the schedule. You're a New England fan. When do they usually host New England? In December. They're hosting New England the first week. That's big because New England's not going to have to deal with the heat and humidity and not being used to it. So that's a 50-50 game in my eyes. Did you give them a win or an L?
Again, that's one of those toss-ups because either New England's going to beat them week 1 or they're going to lose the next meeting. So I'll give them a W right out the gate just because it's at Miami. And even though, to your point, we normally play them later in the year, we struggle in Miami, period.
Now, the next 3 games are absolutely brutal. At Baltimore, that's a loss. Hosting the Bills. Bills have just dominated Tua since he's got in. That's a loss.
At the Bengals.
At the Bengals. That's a loss. So right now we have them at 1-3. They go home, then they go at New York. I think they can win that game because I'm down on the Jets this year.
Yeah, I'm with you.
So that's 2 wins. Then they play Minnesota at home. I'm down on Minnesota this year. I think that's 3 wins. Okay. Then they play Pittsburgh at home. I think that's a win. So we have them at 4 right now. Okay.
Yep.
Now, 3-game winning streak going on the road to play the Lions. I'm telling you guys, Lions are going to be vastly improved this season. I have that as an L.
I will tell you this, though. If the Dolphins are clicking at that point and the Tua connection is good, I would give them a W against the Lions. To your point, the Lions are going to be much better. But if they get through that tough stretch and they rattle off a couple wins, I could see them also winning on the road against the Lions.
Yeah, so we'll call it a call. I gave them a loss. You give them a win. I have them at 4. That means you have them at 5. On the road at Chicago, like I said, I think Chicago is going to be the worst team in the NFL this season. I'm giving them the win there. And then they play at Cleveland. I'm going to give them the L there because I think Watson is back by then.
Yes, agreed.
So I have them at 4 and 6 going into the bye. Okay. Now just listen to the schedule after the bye. They play Houston. I'm telling you guys, Houston's going to be greatly improved than what they were last year. But I gave them the win, so they're at 5 wins.
It's at Miami. I agree.
Now just listen, because this is brutal. You travel all the way to San Francisco to play against your mentor who knows everything you're going to do. Then you go to play against the Chargers in Los Angeles, still on the West Coast. Then after that, you have to fly all the way cross country to play the Bills. 3 road games in a row, brutal stretch. Then you fly down to Miami to play the Packers, back up to Boston to play the Patriots, then back home all the way down to Miami to play the Jets. That's just an absolutely brutal
So they're losing potentially they're losing the last 6 out of 7 games.
Yeah, it's just a brutal stretch. And I have them at 8 and 9. I would lean to the under here, but it just seems that the market just keeps on having money being poured in on them. I suggest you guys, if you guys want to take the under, you wait. If you want to take the over, you take it now.
I agree. I think the reason the over is being hit so hard is due to the roster and the expectations from Tua and the new power that they have on offense. That's it. Other than that, to your point, wait to take the under. But if you want the over, you bet it now.
Yeah, they're buying the name Tyreek Hill. That's what they're doing. Yeah. They see Tyreek Hill going there. They're buying the name. Next, we're going to your boys. We are going to the New England Patriots. Odds via Fanduel, 40-1 to win the Super Bowl, 22-1 to win the AFC, 5-1 to win the AFC East. Over under is 8.5. Last year they were 10-7, but their Pythagorean win total was 12.12. So they underachieved by 2.12. Again, teams that underachieve tend to overachieve the next year. So that's good for your boys. You being the Patriot fan, tell me what you think.
My biggest concern is what we get from Mac Jones. Bill Belichick's openly giving this praise that he's never given before. So is it more of a smokescreen of Mac Jones is doing so much better in the offseason? I'm so impressed. Is that a shot at Brady and he's not doing better and he just wants to get out there and say stuff because Bill never talks? Mac looks like a completely different quarterback. Me and you've talked about it before. I have high hopes for the guy. You're not a big fan of the guy. I think this team's going to rely on the run game and pound Harris and the rookie that was drafted and hopefully open up Jacoby Myers, Devontae Parker, those guys for some stretch plays. I'm overly concerned, but I like the expectations this team has. I see them finishing second in the division. I don't see anybody touching the Buffalo Bills, who we'll get to next. But I'd even want to say this is a wild card team, but you look at the AFC is packed this year, and a lot of moves have been made. And unless New England executes consistently, I think they'll get over the 8.5 win total for sure. I would definitely bet the over on that based off of winning possibly 2 games against Miami and 2 games against the Jets. There's 4 right there. And you know Bill, he pulls out this random upset against a really good team. But what are your thoughts? I can sit here and ramble on because I'm a homer, but I want to know a true betting analyst guy before I get too fandom on it.
So this is my thing. This is my worry. I've always said this, that I can always tell second year if the quarterbacks are it or not, because you need to be able to see them not make the mistakes they made their first year going into their second year. If they're constantly making the same mistakes, that means they haven't learned. That means basically where they are now, there may be a little room for growth, but they won't take that next jump up to that next tier. And my worry is this: no offensive coordinator, no quarterback coach. You look at, we're going to talk about the Bills in a second. Okay. Bills brought in Joe Brady. In my eyes, there's no excuse why they didn't bring in a young quarterback coach, somebody that can work with Mac Jones so he can make those steps. That's my big worry with them. Also, looking at it, you mentioned they brought in Devontae Parker. They were 8th in rushing attempts, 8th in rushing yards. They bring in Parker and Mac Jones's completion percentage on passes over 20 yards was 38%. That's bottom 4 in the NFL. So he really can't throw the ball down the field. I do agree with you. I think this is going to be a ground and pound team. Belichick has a history of running these running backs that are in the last year of their contract into the ground. With that being said, you're telling me Belichick's going to run this guy into the ground. They had the 8th most rushing attempts last year, and I'm getting the lead back at over 850 rushing yards. I love that.
Yeah.
That was one of the futures I locked in. I had 3 futures for this episode. That's the first one. The second one, and this one's a flyer. This one's one of those low risk, high rewards. Again, a run first team. They had the 8th most rushing attempts in the league last year, 8th most total rushing yards. This team is going to want to run the ball. There's no secret about that. I'm taking a small play, a quarter unit play. Damian Harris, 25-1 to have the most rushing yards. I think that's a low risk, high reward play just because of the way they want to go. And yes, I understand that Shaq Mason isn't going to be there. For those who don't know, Shaq Mason, PFF 4th rated guard. He left. He's in Tampa right now. They drafted the kid Cole Strange from Chattanooga. Everyone I know, all 2 of them in the Patriots organization, is telling me this kid looks good. And if this kid is playing at the level they're seeing, their run game is going to be fine. I'm banking on my source. I'm banking on my knowledge of Belichick, of what he likes to do. So I love those 2 futures. I locked those in. My worry is this on the defensive side of the ball, losing J.C. Jackson, because kind of the way that Belichick wants to play defense, you kind of need that elite DB. But I will say this, he does have a history of just developing these rando type guys.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, when you have your first round pick last year come out of Lenore Ryan in North Carolina, you're thinking, where's this guy from? Who is he? He's a no name, and he turns out to be a great athlete. Bill's been known to take a player that can play many positions, moving Edelman from a quarterback to receiver. Like, he's been known to do that stuff. But at what point does that slow down for Bill? You know, like, are you the new Jerry Jones of the Patriots? Are you trying to be the GM, the coach, the offensive coordinator, the defensive coordinator? I don't buy this whole thing that there's no true offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator. You can't be in both meetings at one time. So clearly he can't be doing both. So I think that's more of a smokescreen in general. And Bill does have a game plan. But I've been up on Mac Jones. You've been down on Mac Jones. I think this is the year that, unfortunately for New England fans, you're either going to have really high hopes for the future or you're really going to have big, big letdowns on what to expect because of Mac Jones. I think it all rides on his shoulders. There's a lot of pressure on him right now, and I think it's going to be make or break.
So my boy Roberto just asked a question. Patriots plus 130 to make the playoffs. Now, I have an interesting idea on this one. What do you think about this?
I'm just going to say no, even though I'm a Pats fan. I'm going to say no based off of how stacked the AFC is. You're going to have teams that should win a division that are going to make wild cards. And I don't think the Pats are that team, personally.
So this is my thought process. Let's just dive into their schedule real quick. We have them losing at Miami, 0-1. Okay. We have them, then when they go to Pitt, I mean, if Trubisky, as crazy as it sounds, if Kenny Smallhands Pickett is playing that game, they're going to win it. If Trubisky is playing it, it's 60-40, they're going to win it. So I'm going to give them a win there. So they're 1-1. Then they play Baltimore. I think they're going to lose to Baltimore 1-2. Yeah. Then they're going to play at Green Bay. I think they lose that. They're 1-3.
Yeah.
So if they're 1-3 right there, they're plus 130 to make the playoffs. Now, for those who don't know, I'm on Gino Bacala's podcast every Thursday. We go through every single game. And one thing Gino and I started doing is looking at these future bets to make the playoffs. And the biggest one we cashed was the Eagles at plus 400 to make the playoffs when they started off slow. And I really think with how the Patriots schedule pops up, we're going to be able to get them at north of 2-1 after the first 4 games.
I see what you're doing there because I'm assuming you have a win at the Lions or a win at home against the Lions, a win against the Browns on the road, a win against the Bears, a win in New Jersey against the Jets,
and a 50-50 game against the Colts. They can just rattle off stuff. And then you look at it, they start off 1-4. They win 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 6-4, they're right in the heap of it. And the thing we need to remember is this. We need to remember this. The AFC West is a freaking minefield of great teams. Those teams are just going to beat each other up. So if the Patriots can get to 10, I think they make the playoffs.
Here's where I want to backtrack just a little bit. Let's say they beat the Colts, beat the Jets. Okay, you're in November 20th. They beat the Jets. Then it's a toss-up against the Vikings.
Dude, I'm telling you, the Vikings are going to be bad this year.
Okay, so give them a win there. So they rattled 7 off right there. That'd be 7 in a row, which we know there's going to be a hiccup somewhere.
There's obviously going to be a hiccup, but I'm just saying there's the potential to get there. And the thing when you do these futures, you got to be thinking ahead. And this is going to be at minus money at this point if they go like 5-2 in the 7-game stretch.
Okay, so you have that. But then you're home against the Bills, And if the Bills are rolling like we all expect them to come December 1st, that's an L. At the Cardinals, that can be an L.
But see, the thing with the Cardinals is this, though. They play Thursday, then they don't play until Monday. So it's kind of like they have a mini bye.
Okay.
And I don't know if you saw it, but you have to really question Kyler Murray when you're seeing that they put in his contract. He has to have a minimum of 4 hours practicing. Come on. Belichick's going to eat that up. Then you play the Raiders. Raiders have huge issues on the offensive line. I know everyone's excited about Devontae Adams and Chandler Jones, but Father Time is undefeated. They have huge questions on the offensive line. Patriots have Judon, who's one of the best pass rushers in the league. That could be a win. Fine, you play the Bengals. That could be a loss. Then you play Miami. Okay, I'll say that's a fit.
We'll say that's a win because if we lose week 1, we always split with them. So you got to give them a win come January 1st in New England.
Yeah, and then
at the
Buffalo,
Bills,
who knows? Like Buffalo at this point of the season, Buffalo could be resting guys.
Yeah.
Buffalo could be resting guys. I have them at 10-7. I would lean toward the over, but I don't like investing in too many of these futures. I like the Harris plays a lot better, and then I'll try to get them to make the playoffs if they start out at 1-3. That's kind of my mindset.
I like that a lot.
Now, as my boy David says, let's go Bills. Bills Mafia. We're switching over to our last team, the Buffalo Bills. Odds via Fanduel plus 650 to win the Super Bowl, plus 350 to win the AFC, minus 220. That's a juicy number. No way I'm laying those odds. Over under of 11.5. Last year they were 11-6. Pythagorean total was 12.92. So they did underachieve by 1.92, meaning they are in need for some positive regression this year. What are your thoughts of the Buffalo Bills?
I do think they win the division. I do think they're a tough team. Allen is, to me, such an underrated quarterback. The only concern I have with the Bills, and we'll break it down here in a minute, but is their schedule. And I think when we go through their schedule, it's going to raise some eyebrows to people on why they could start off 3-3, 4-3, 4-4. Like their schedule is really interesting compared to other teams that they compete with in the AFC East.
Now, I'm looking at it like this. They had the best defense in the league last year.
Yes.
They bring in Von Miller, established pass rusher. They drafted the kid from Florida, who I had very high on my draft board to be in their DB room. Then they made 2 very sneaky signings that no one is talking about. Daquan Jones and Tim Settle at the defensive line, really going to help the interior of the defensive line. But obviously the big elephant in the room is what? Brian Daboll is not there. With him not there, what's going to happen? What Brian Daboll did is he completely changed the offensive system and made Allen comfortable. He goes back. He has an option of his first 2 reads out there. He just runs. That made him more comfortable throwing the ball, as you can see from the progressions that he made. Ken Dorsey is there now.
Yeah.
Being the offensive coordinator. They promoted him up. Former Hurricane. I won't say great. I'll just say former Hurricane quarterback.
Good call.
And then they hired my man, Joe Brady, as the quarterback coach. Joe Brady used to be at LSU. I really think we're going to see Brady implement a lot of the packages, a lot of the stuff they did at LSU. And that kind of piggybacks why I'm so high on James Cook. They hired Aaron Comer to be their offensive line coach. He's going to come in and he's going to switch it to more of a zone-based running scheme. Devin Singletary is not a zone runner. James Cook is. They spent a 2nd-round draft pick on this kid. The last 4 games of the season, they started to run the ball more with the switch to a new scheme, them realizing Allen cannot run the ball 35% of the time, and drafting Cook at such a high capital. I think Cook's going to be the lead dog here. I think he's going to get most of the carries. And you look at the offensive line, they brought in Roger Scaffell, 13th ranked PFF guard. David Quisenberry, 5th ranked PFF guard. This offensive line has gotten better. I think they're going to be running the ball a lot more. Less Allen carries. I love James Cook, rookie of the year.
12-1.
Pencil that in. Absolutely love it.
I was
Fantasy Football Spotlight in episode 1. I'm telling you guys, you're going to be able to draft this guy in the 9th round, and he's this year's James Cook. He's winning your fantasy football title.
Man, I wish I could have cut you off because I wanted to ask you if you saw the odds of him for Rookie of the Year, but you took it out of my mouth. 12-1. That's huge. To your point, come fantasy-wise, he is going to be sitting there round after round after round. So just leave him there, and when you get that 8th, 9th, or 10th round choice and he's sitting there, grab him, and you won't regret it your entire fantasy season. Period.
Also, another thing they did in the offense is they brought in Jameson Crowder. I really think it's an underrated signing. Crowder's just this dude. He's been Washington, the Jets, just the guy that works at the underneath, the guy that can catch the ball, the guy that can extend this change. Perfect running mate for Gabriel Davis, for Stephon Diggs. I really think that's an underrated signing. Really like the Bills. But now let's break off their schedule. Let's dive into their schedule. One of my angles I like to bet, I'm just telling you right now, I love to bet against the teams raising the banner. So I have them winning week 1 at Los Angeles.
I can't do that. Like, I get your point. I get your mindset on it, and I see that. But with the powerhouse of the Rams, I see that actually as a low-scoring game. But it's one of those, to me, I'm going with home field advantage. You got 2 dominant teams, 2 great defenses, 2 great offenses, and I've got to go with the home team. And I've never been a fan of betting, even though it's week 1, of betting an East Coast team traveling west. I've always felt that East Coast teams have traveled west bad and West Coast teams have traveled east bad. So we're going to be off on that one, but I've got the Rams in week 1.
Yeah, I think the Rams are going to miss Wentworth. I mean, I did a kind of a deep dive on what they did with him. So I have them at 1-0. You have them at 0-1.
Yep.
Now they play Tennessee. Tennessee is an absolute train wreck.
Yes.
So I have them at 2-0. You have them at
1-1.
All right. Now they go at Miami. They're winning this game. So I have them at 3-1. You have them at 2-2. I have them losing at Baltimore.
Same.
Okay. So now they play Pittsburgh. I have them winning that game.
Yes. Okay. I have them beating Pittsburgh. Yes.
Now they play at Kansas City. Now you're telling me they're not going to be locked and loaded for that game? Like this, I have certain rules. I could do a whole hour show on my gambling rules. And one of them is I never lay points on the road. And reality of the situation is Buffalo is probably going to be laying points. I would actually contemplate taking Buffalo minus the points on the road here, just because I think they're going to absolutely boat race the Chiefs in this spot.
All right, so we're going to have to disagree again. I don't see them beating the Chiefs at Kansas City that quickly. I see what you're saying after the previous week, what they're going to be looking to do, but I can't bet against the Chiefs when it comes to the Bills. I can't.
All right, so I have them at 5-1. You have them at what?
3-2.
All right. So then they play
3. I'm sorry, 3-3. 3-3.
Then they play the Packers after the bye. I have that as a win.
Yes.
Then they play the Jets. I have that as a win.
Yes.
Then they play Minnesota. I have that as a win.
Yep.
Then they play Cleveland. You know what?
Still a win, no matter who's at quarterback.
Still a win. Now, call me a homer.
Here we go.
Call me a homer. Call me a homer. But what's the rule in betting?
They've got
the spot and you play the situation. You look at this situation here. They have the Lions sandwiched between the Browns, and then they play your boys the next spot. This is I'm not saying they're going to win, but this is a spot amongst spots where you have to bet the Lions.
So here's what happens. Either they demolish the Lions and lose to the Pats, or they get upset by the Lions and they tear the Pats up at home on December 1st. They're not going to win both games. That's something I'll dive into. Like, they're not going to win both games. This is that they either get upset by the Lions and destroy the Pats, or they easily win against the Lions and just barely get beat by the Pats in New England.
Then after that, they play the Jets, Miami, and Bears. I have a win in all 3.
Yeah, and then the Bengals, I would almost still want to take the Bills over the Bengals.
And then I have them losing against New England because I think they're resting everyone. I have them at
Resting.
12-5.
I'm
I
with
have
you.
them at 12-5. Brandon, I would like to thank you for coming on. My 3 future bets are Damian Harris over 850 yards, Damian Harris 25-1 to win to have the most rushing yards, and James Cook rookie of the year. What are your future bets?
I'm siding with you on all 3 of them. For anybody that watches our NASCAR bets, me and him normally don't get along with these, but I am on board with all 3 of those. And I do like the Dolphins over if they start off well. But to your point, if you're going to bet the over, bet it now. If you're going to bet the under, just wait a couple weeks. And the Jets finished dead last in the division. That's
given. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for being part of the chat room. Appreciate you guys. We'll be back next week. My boy Louis is going to be hopping on, and we are going to be breaking down the NFC East. Until next week.